I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp, and on my new podcast, Bite Back with Abby Sharp, I'll be dismantling the multi-billion-dollar diet industry that keeps us in a cycle of self-loathing and food fear. Join me every Tuesday for expert interviews, engaging conversations, and my signature science and sass to bust myths, correct misinformation, and help you break free from diet culture for good. Listen for free on the Seeker app or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to a Frequency Podcast Network production.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
This is the Brock and Dalby Podcast.
Welcome to Tuesday. My name is Brock.
I'm Dalby.
Do you want to give fair warning? People kept asking us stuff about the election today. We don't really give a shit. I mean, it's not that we don't care.
No, we both have our personal opinions, and, we are friends who off the radio can have that conversation. But let's face it, there's already enough pseudo-celebrities out there telling you all the things that they think you need to know. You didn't come here for that.
Plus, I feel like people only care to ask you what your opinions are about the election as long as you agree with them. So it's right. I think, with our jobs, there's no point of us talking about it, because if you don't like what we say, right, then you're against us, or we're with you and you like us. But the one thing I am excited about with this election finally being done, I mean, it could take a week.
Yeah.
But is the fact that we're going to get a bunch of great memes, which is going to be fantastic for all of us.
Absolutely. The content will be plentiful.
And B, all these celebrities who like to act like their opinions matter and they know everything can finally shut the front door.
Dude, I saw a post today that was former NASCAR driver Danica Patrick weighs in on something. She's got a problem with Kamala Harris.
Who cares?
That was the first thing I thought of. I'm like, have we really reached the point where we're asking somewhat vaguely famous NASCAR racer Danica Patrick?
Also, the irony of having Danica Patrick talk about winning a race is hilarious to me.
Yeah. Starting tomorrow, these people can just go back to living their lives and making their music or making movies or losing car races, and then we can all just go back to talking to each other like normal people. Maybe.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
Things are a little bit different here in the studio this morning. As Dalby and myself, we both have third nipples now.
That's right. Yeah, we woke up yesterday morning, just normal, average, double-nippled guys, and here we are today, rockin' tries.
We're nipped up.
Trip nips.
We got the nipple ankle tattoos yesterday. Shout out to Will and Kurt at Mutiny for doing it for us. And
Will did suggest that we need a name for them.
For nipples?
Because he's like, I can't figure out how to combine ankle and nipple into one word. So he asked me to put it out to the people of the Dirty 530, 762-555, if you can come up with a name for our ankle nipples. The closest I was able to come up with was Ankiola.
I was thinking Ankip.
Ankip?
Ankable? Nipkles.
How do you feel about yours in the light of the day? I guess the light of the 5:30.
It was one of those things that it was really funny on paper till it was real, and I was like, oh, okay.
When you saw it this morning, were you like, oh?
I didn't look at it this morning. I just haven't looked at it.
Fair.
Yeah. I put my sock over it, and I was like, I'm just gonna leave it for now.
I had to show the kids. They came running out of school yesterday, and that was all they wanted to see was show us your nipple. Which is a weird thing to have someone yell at you at a schoolyard.
100%.
So, especially then the other parents watching me pull my sock down.
Everyone's looking at you like, what the hell is this guy about to do?
I did get a dap from my son's teacher who was like, respect.
Nice. If you want to see the nipple for yourself, text nipple to 762-555
yes.
and check the podcast links. We will put it in there as well. The one thing that annoyed me was... I don't know if you noticed, is I had to post the photo 2 times yesterday on Instagram, because the first time I posted it, within 2 minutes it got flagged.
Oh.
Saying it was like, I don't know, indecent, you know what I'm saying? Like material, whatever, something like that.
Really?
Yeah, it got flagged because they thought we were actually showing. I was like, it's on our feet. And so I don't know if it was because it was posting feet photos with nipples. So for Instagram, I blurred out our toes.
Which, honestly, I kind of wish you had done that for Facebook as well. I don't know how I feel about my grippers being out there for free.
I don't know what Instagram didn't like, if it was the nipple or if it was the feet.
Yeah.
Because I just posted a photo of our feet, so I was like, I know that's kind of a sexual thing for some people. I don't know what the line is, but I almost got shadow banned for that.
That's so funny. Instagram just like, hey, a nipple is a nipple is a nipple. Get it out of here.
Well, I learned once, like, I flashed my nipple in a photo, and Instagram tried to ban me for like 30 days.
That's right. It was like you and one of your tropical vacations, right?
Yeah.
That's so good.
They don't like nipples and they don't like feet, so be careful, guys, out there.
Hashtag free the nipple, baby.
Yeah,
Let
and
it fly.
Only be texting in if you actually just want to see the tattoo. No perverts allowed.
Yeah.
Right?
Them toes are grayed out, all right? You
Yeah.
can't see them.
That's for the OnlyFans when we get fired one day.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
We've got 3 different people texting in, not saying they have a third nipple, but saying they know someone with a third nipple. And then we did get this message on the bad line.
Hey guys, my grandpa had a third nipple actually right on his left shoulder, is pointing straight at the sky.
And then I Googled it.
Like a little nipple antenna.
Apparently, 1 to 5% of the world's population has a third nipple.
5% of 8 billion would be like 400 million, if my math is not too bad.
That's
something like
400 million extra nipples.
We're 400 million surplus.
Yeah.
Although, no, because there are people who, through whatever reason, would only have one, or some people have no nipples.
Yeah.
So I bet it balances out.
Yeah.
I bet that they're making up for each other in that math equation.
Yeah, that's a lot of extra nipples,
We're
though.
nipple equilibrium in the grand scheme of things.
I wonder how many people just have, like, extra body parts in general, you know?
I've always thought it would be interesting. You see the people who have like an extra digit, like an extra finger. They've got the 6 fingers. I've always wondered, like, do you just have like a crazy good grip? Just having that extra finger, like, do you never drop anything?
Yeah.
With that extra appendage?
You're just able to hold all the groceries, one extra grocery bag on that pinky coming in.
Oh, that's a flex right there.
You know, I question, if you could have one extra body part, what body part would you want?
Let me ask you this. If I say arm, because you're the genie granting the wish here, if I say arm, does it include all the way down to the hand fingertips?
I guess where you're going to put it, though.
That's my only thing. Having a third arm. Mortal Kombat taught me that 4 arms makes you an unstoppable killing machine.
Sure.
I think you go ribs, right? Like you go down where my normal arm is, my right. Then you go down about 5 or 6 ribs, and there's another one.
But you got to have it hanging a little bit back so you can actually scratch your back, kind of thing.
Yeah. You just adjust the angle so that it can sort of get coverage of where my normal arm can't reach.
See, I was gonna say maybe like an eye or an ear, and then you can like put it at the back of your head so you can like see or hear a little bit better.
Yeah, that's true. But then if I need to touch up my LASIK, it's going to be one eye more expensive.
Yeah, true. Valid point.
trying to get glasses for a third eye.
You know what's the most expensive organ? Actually, is probably
what could you sell?
Yeah.
Well, it's the heart, right?
Yeah, I have maybe an extra heart. Have 3 kidneys, 2 livers if you're an alcoholic.
Give me a few extra organs and let me shop them around a little bit.
Yeah, sell it on the black market. In this economy?
I love that this went from like, what would be the functionally best extra body part to have, to how could you scavenge your own body to pay rent?
That's life, man.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
Just saw the wildest headline on the internet here. It says an 88-year-old man in France recently had an entire hospital evacuate. Actually, I want to see if you can fill in the blanks here.
Sorry, so 88-year-old French man.
An 88-year-old man in France recently had an entire hospital evacuated because why?
Oh, I mean, I have to assume some sort of, it's a hospital, some sort of communicable disease, the Black Plague or something.
No, try again. Why else would the hospital be evacuated?
Maybe a smell, an odor? Did he, get a hold of a scalpel or something?
He didn't have a scalpel, but you could say he had a hold of something.
Okay, I don't know. I can't imagine how one 88-year-old man evacuates a hospital.
You ready for this?
Sure.
88-year-old man evacuated a whole hospital because he had a World War I shell stuck in his anus.
Sorry, a shell, as in artillery.
Yeah.
Stuck in his anus.
There is a photo here. Look.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's
look at this.
Oh, that is significant.
Apparently, it's about 8 inches long.
Yeah.
I don't know what the diameter of it is.
You know, when you said shell, I thought of the more classic bomb shape, tapered to a point almost.
Very cylinder-like.
That looks like just a big, massive shotgun shell.
Now, apparently, this guy is claiming it happened accidentally.
Well, of course, yeah. Who would do that on purpose?
Which, I don't know how you slip and fall on this thing.
Sometimes you go to sit down, you don't look where you're going, there's a World War I artillery shell sitting there, and all of a sudden...
I feel like people in hospitals probably hear that quite often when these kind of situations go down.
No, Doc, you don't understand. It was an accident. Oh, sure it was.
I mean, there's no real good answer for it, I guess.
Well, I mean, they say the truth will set you free, but at the end of the day, you still have live ammunition in your backside.
Yeah.
You are carrying around devastation in your rectum.
And the reason why I'd evacuated the hospital is because they didn't know if it would, blow up.
Well, yeah, it's like when they find the underwater mines from the old wars and stuff like that. You have to treat it as though it is an active explosive until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
You can't just go poking around in there. He did, but you shouldn't.
My thing is, do you get to keep it afterwards?
I guess it depends on whose it was before it ended up. Possession is 9/10 of the law.
It's probably worth something, right? It's a World War I relic.
Absolutely. There are probably museums that would love to wash it off and then put it on display.
I mean, even to have it at your house, I guess it was a good conversation piece. I don't know if you want to talk about it anymore.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
I think we could probably come up with a couple bad puns when we're talking about an 88-year-old man with a World War I shell stuck in his rectum.
So I figure let's just get into it. Do you want to start here?
Oh, sure, yeah. 88-year-old French man evacuated a whole hospital because he had a World War I shell stuck in his anus. Fire in the hole!
I had that written down, too. An 88-year-old French man evacuated a whole hospital because he had a World War I shell stuck in his anus. Heard Buddy had a real arsenal. You get it?
I do get it, and it's great. 88-year-old French man evacuated a whole hospital because he had a World War I shell stuck in his anus. It was this close to being the most explosive game of pull my finger in world history.
Damn, I had an explosive diarrhea one day. 88-year-old French man evacuated a whole hospital because he had a World War I shell stuck in his anus. So, weird way to honor the troops. Some say he'll never forget.
An 88-year-old French man evacuated a whole hospital because he had a World War I shell stuck in his anus. The man was told next time just to shell out for the extra baggage fee at the airport. Those fees will get you, man.
88-year-old French man evacuated a whole hospital because he had a World War I shell stuck in his anus. These war reenactments are really getting out of hand.
Really committed to the bit. An 88-year-old French man evacuated a whole hospital because he had a World War I shell stuck in his anus. And this is why you only use artillery with a flared bottom. You gotta be safe.
I'm done. The
flared bottom got you.
Yeah.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
I did see one that said, this is the new punishment for putting your Christmas lights up before the 11th.
I thought of one more as soon as we went off air.
Okay.
Doctors said they'd never seen anything like this C4. It's C4, you know? Anyways. That's enough about that.
I'm triggered by that one.
This is the Brock and Dalby Podcast.
Over the weekend, Vince Carter had his number retired by the Toronto Raptors, and I've been seeing a lot of people on the internet say he's the greatest Raptor of all time, and then a lot of people saying that he's the greatest Toronto athlete of all time, and
No.
I disagree with that completely.
I'll say this. I don't think the greatest Toronto athlete can be a Raptor. And I'm not trying to knock basketball. I just don't think the team's been around long enough or has done enough.
Well, and Vince Carter specifically, it's like when he left, people booed that guy for like 20 years every time he came back.
Right. It's really nice that now that we're like celebrating and he's retiring and he's coming back and he's getting cheered and stuff like that, but like, we can't ignore what y'all did to that man when he left Toronto.
And I see the texts already of people like Doug Gilmour, Wendell Clark, and I think you could argue that they could be potential for like greatest Leafs of all time. But then again, I hate to say it, they never won anything.
That's just it. I think, and you tell me if I'm saying crazy things here, I think if this current Toronto Maple Leafs team wins a Stanley Cup, I think Austin Matthews jumps to the top of the list right away.
I would agree with that.
I think he becomes the greatest Toronto athlete of all time because he is and you know me, I make fun of the guy, but he is a leader in the league. He is an exceptional player. The knock on him right now is that he disappears in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If they win a Stanley Cup, he becomes the biggest.
No,
but
I 100% agree with that.
Until then, it's Penny Oleksiak, right? The Olympic swimmer?
The swimmer?
She's from Toronto.
I mean, yeah, with all the gold medals.
I mean, just kind of putting it out. Or does that not count because
she's not on a Toronto sports team?
That's right.
I think that's kind of what it is. Yeah,
great Canadian athlete.
That's a good point, though, because I was going to say, like, if you look at like Toronto sports as a whole, Tim Horton.
Most famous, for sure.
I mean, but like greatest Toronto athlete of all time. He won 4 cups with the Leafs.
Right.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And his name, like you said.
90% of people don't know he's a hockey player. And 90 might be low.
You think?
Outside of Toronto, I think if you go to a coffee shop in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan and go, you know who Tim Horton is? They go, yeah, coffee shop down the street. Coffee
True.
used to be good.
There's probably a lot of kids that don't know that. What about a lot of people saying Joe Carter in on the text line? I mean, back-to-back World Series.
Touch 'em all, Joe.
He was the one who hit the home run for them.
Iconic moments. Probably, I mean, there were some big names on that team. Roberto Alomar, Joe Carter. Yeah, I would say he's probably the biggest one.
I'd say it's between Joe Carter and Michael Clemens.
Was Michael Clemens?
Michael Clemens, most rushing yards in the CFL, 4-time Grey Cup champion.
Okay, his name is Pinball. Don't call him by his government name.
Pinball Clemens. Honestly, he'd probably be the greatest Toronto athlete if you look at the stats.
I think he is in the same boat as Tim Horton of like, yes, he's done things, but no one was paying attention. No one watches the CFL. And if they watch the CFL, they're not watching the Argos.
Don't disrespect the CFL like that.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
A lot of people texting in like some old Leafs like Johnny Bauer, Bobby Bond, Eddie Shack, Bill Barilko.
Maybe best at hide and seek. That's about it.
Jesus, dude. I mean, they all won Stanley Cups.
Listen, these are all talented players, right? Like, they have their thing, but it's just, I have trouble saying it's the greatest Toronto sports, like, athlete.
Yeah.
Because it's so long ago. And I don't mean to disrespect those teams, but there's just so many people now that, like, those players are more thought of as a footnote in the history of a team as opposed to, like, are people still buying Bauer jerseys? You know what I mean?
Certain demographics.
Some.
Yeah.
But it's not a hot seller.
It's like saying Charlie Chaplin's like the greatest actor of all time.
It's tough because you have to balance out a bunch of different things, right? They have to have accomplishments. They have to have been skilled at the game, but they also have to have the recognition.
Now, a lot of people are saying Roy Halladay, but I would even argue that, he had a lot of great years with the Jays, but then no success with winning anything. I mean, he won Cy Youngs, all that kind of stuff.
He was an all-star numerous times, but on pretty bad Jays teams.
Never made the postseason until he played with the Phillies. So, but I think if you look at like the stats and the championships and everything, I still do think it's Pinball Clemens or it's Colin Doyle.
The guy from Great Big Sea?
First off,
sorry.
That's Alan Doyle.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Colin Doyle? Am I the only one who knows who Colin Doyle is?
He's Alan Doyle's brother. Does he play bass in Great Big Sea?
Nobody appreciates lacrosse either.
Oh!
Toronto Rock captain, five championships.
Oh, I love that guy. He's great.
All right, so that's a no
When
then.
I'm up, I can't get down. That's the song, right?
The guy from Great Big Sea. Guy didn't blow out his knees for that. Does nobody know who Colin Doyle is?
I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp, and on my new podcast, Bite Back with Abby Sharp, I'll be dismantling the multi-billion-dollar diet industry that keeps us in a cycle of self-loathing and food fear. Join me every Tuesday for expert interviews, engaging conversations, and my signature science and sass to bust myths, correct misinformation, and help you break free from diet culture for good. Listen for free on the Seeker app or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
Saw this interview on a podcast with a boss of a company down in the States that is kind of got people divided on something he says he uses when he's doing job interviews to hire for his company. Says they've got a really nice office and he will bring someone in for a job interview and kind of walk them around, give them the tour. This is this is that. Always takes them by the break room and offers them either a glass of water or a mug of coffee to make sure that they've got some sort of drink receptacle in hand.
Okay.
Then the interview moves down to the office. Then it's a standard job interview. Sit across the desk, ask questions. You both lie to each other. Everything's fine. But the trick is that at the end of the interview, he waits to see what the interviewee does with their cup. Whether they just leave it there on the boss's desk after they say their goodbyes and then walks away, or do they offer to take the cup back to the break room and wash it themselves? And he says that is usually the determining factor in whether or not they hire somebody. And there are people who are saying like, oh, what a great little test to see, because the boss says it's like, will they fit into the office? Will they mesh with everybody? Do they have sort of good etiquette? But other people are saying like, if I come to your house and you offer me a cup of coffee, it's not on me to now go and do your dishes.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of seeing like what they do of like, hey, where should I put this kind of thing?
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably a fair thing. Like, I wouldn't expect someone to go and like wash dishes in a kitchen they don't even work at. But I would expect them to be like, hey, can I take this somewhere? Can I put this back?
I will say I kind of gauge people when they come in my car if they have like a snack. If you stuff it in the side door, you're a terrible person, versus if you put it in your pocket or you ask, what should I do with this?
Right.
Probably a better person in my books.
You know what? Speaking of cars, another good one is if you have friends that smoke, if they ask you or if they just light up.
Yeah.
I've had that before where and even as a ex-smoker, when I was smoking, I would try not to smoke in my car because it's the vehicle I drive my kids around in. But I would have friends that would like jump in and light up and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you
Get
always
out.
got to ask with a dart. Yeah.
There's always these little tricks to find out whether or not someone is a good person. I think my favorite one, and this is the classic, is the shopping cart theory.
Oh, yeah. If you don't put your shopping cart away, you're a piece of garbage.
You really can judge a person, and I don't care about like who you are, your background, where you come from, any of that stuff. If I see you at a store with a shopping cart and you don't put it back in the corral or back to the store, I immediately just assume that you are scum.
Yeah.
You are a bad person.
No, and you're not wrong for that at all.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
Someone said, my girlfriend would say if you put down the toilet seat or not.
That is a really good gauge of whether or not someone takes other people into account when they're doing stuff.
I will say I will judge any guy based on if I go into the bathroom after you and there's some dribble on the seat and you didn't even bother to wipe it up.
Oh, that's scumbag maneuver. Absolutely. And especially because it's like, this isn't a public bathroom. I know it was you. I know that's your pee.
I think even the courtesy flush if you're in the bathroom with someone.
Oh, if you are in a public bathroom and you know that, like, you're making this bad for everybody.
Yeah, someone else said admitting to a fart is another big one as well.
Yeah, I mean, that one, it depends on how you admit to it. If you make a big deal about it, it actually goes back around the other way.
Sure. We do have friend of the show, Becky, on the phone. Becky, what's a subtle way you can tell someone's a good person?
I'm always a door holder, so if somebody doesn't hold a door for me, if I'm directly behind them, I make sure that I say thank you.
You let them know.
Yeah, you know what?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
the holding the door, but it's also what does someone say to the person holding the door as well. That's just as important.
This is true. Yeah.
Like, if you're holding the door and someone goes through silently, do you judge them for that?
Yeah, you suck.
I'll say it's opposite end. I'll say you're welcome.
Yeah, that passive-aggressive, you're welcome.
Yeah. You can also get stuck at the door. Like, I don't know if this makes me a bad person, but if I get to the door, I will always clock if there's anybody around, right? If there's one person, I hold the door. 2 people, no problem. If I see a group of people, that's when you do the move where you, like, pass the door to the next person.
Yeah,
you know
or you
I mean?
hit the handicap button.
Yeah. Like, I'm going to hold it open just enough for you to get a hand on the door. So I've done my part, but I am not putting in a shift at work today.
Well, there's a fine line between being a good person and a pushover, you know?
That is very true.
And I'd say that's 5 to 6 people holding the door for.
I mean, at that point, you got to put on, like, a little cap and a jacket and start asking for tips as people come through.
If you got enough people to put on an NBA court going through the door, you've done your job.
What if you're holding it for an NBA team? Does that change it?
They're tall enough.
This is the Brock and Dalby Podcast.
I think you should text. Send a text right now. 762-555. Ask us anything you want. All the questions. Any concerns. All your comments. We're open right now. Just send a text to us. Text to us. 762-555. Just send a text to us. Text to us. We'll try to reply. Couple of texty boys right there.
Oh, gross.
Thank you for joining in on the harmony. I wasn't sure if you were.
Brother, I've been listening to that song since I was 4 years old. I had to jump in. I, physically could not have sat here quietly.
Someone did say if you were running for president or you could be prime minister for a day, what would you do with your day?
God, you know what? Because there's so little that you can actually accomplish with how ridiculous our political system is.
Sure.
In a single day, I would probably just find a way to get as much money into my bank account as possible.
I was going to say something like that, or maybe release all the UFO findings.
Oh, see, okay, that's something,
right?
Yeah, if I have, the clearance to start looking at some things that are, classified, I'm trying to get as much of that in front of me as possible before the 24 hours is up. Mm-hmm. But in terms of, people who tell, I would change this law, or I would do that... You couldn't.
The only thing I would like to make a law is make it illegal for commercials to be randomly louder than the show that you're watching.
Dude, you'd be celebrated as one of the greatest prime ministers in the history of this country.
That's not hard, actually.
Low bar, sure. This one says, why, this is a thinker, are pencils able to write on erasers?
Never thought about that before. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, obviously erasers only work when you use friction on them, but I just love the idea that, someone could be sitting there right now just whoa, man.
Hope you enjoyed your wake and bake. Someone said, what's the best way to get back at someone who cut you off? I mean, just breathe. You don't need to get back at them.
Honestly, yeah. Make it from where you are to where you're going without getting pulled over or in an accident.
Flipping the bird is nice, but I've started seeing people do the trend of just giving the thumbs down.
Oh.
And I think that stings more than the middle finger.
The middle finger doesn't mean anything anymore. And I'll say this is a controversial opinion. Stone Cold Steve Austin ruined the middle finger because now everybody does it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same meaning. But a crisp thumbs down? Damn.
Or if you can make yourself cry on command and pull up to someone on a light.
Just bawling your eyes out. Yeah, I think you said it best first. Don't get even with people. Yes, it sucks when someone cuts you off and you want to flip them off and lay on the horn and all these other things. But then, what if they stop? Are you willing to physically or at the very least verbally continue this debate?
Yeah.
Just move on.
All right, finally we'll wrap up with this one here. Someone said, if you were a food, any food, what would you and Dalby be?
Oh, God.
If you were a food, what would you be, Dalby?
What's something really fatty?
was going to say you're like pineapple on pizza. You know, not everybody enjoys you, but you're kind of sweet.
I'm not for everyone. But the people that like me will argue to the death about it. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm a Butterfinger. I'm pretty smooth, but I could kill you. So.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast.
Ed's word of the day.
Top of the morning to you.
Ooh.
Today's word is polymath. Yep, polymath. Polymath.
What kind of Pokemon is that?
And it's a person of great knowledge or learning. I know a few people that think they're that. Anyways, that just about does it. Have a great one. Cheers her up.
Polymath.
That's got to be the most boring kind of poly I've ever heard.
A person of wide-ranging knowledge or learning. So basically a know-it-all?
I don't even think it's a know-it-all. I think it's just someone who knows, because it doesn't specify that they have to be like advanced learned about a bunch of different things.
Okay.
It just says wide-ranging knowledge. You just know a bunch of different stuff. That's not called being a polymath. That's ADHD.
It's like when I sit around with my buddies and we just riff rosters of former NHL teams from the early 2000s.
Right. You mix in a little bit of 90s television and some like new metal trivia in there, and you're
If you say Simpsons quotes on the regular, you're a polymath.
You're probably at least a little bit of a polymath.
It is funny here. It says the most famous polymaths of all time are people like Da Vinci, Aristotle, Isaac Newton.
Yeah, me and them, all one and the same.
Benjamin Franklin is apparently the most famous polymath in history, but I will say, if that guy had died getting electrocuted with that kite,
right,
you go from a polymath to a dumbass real quick, right?
We don't put him on nearly as many stamps.
There's a fine line between being a polymath and a dumbass, I think.
See, and then again, to go back to what I was saying earlier, I'm pretty sure he was a few other kinds of poly, too, back in the day. So
Sure.
A real man of interest.
Polymath. Use it wherever you can, all right?
For more Brock and Dalby, tune in weekday mornings 5:30 to 9.
The Brock and Dalby Podcast is brought to you by BadShop.ca, the Brock and Dalby merch store, with all proceeds going to the Canadian Cancer Society.
I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp, and on my new podcast, Bite Back with Abby Sharp, I'll be dismantling the multi-billion-dollar diet industry that keeps us in a cycle of self-loathing and food fear. Join me every Tuesday for expert interviews, engaging conversations, and my signature science and sass to bust myths, correct misinformation, and help you break free from diet culture for good. Listen for free on the Seeker app or wherever you get your podcasts.